Good morning and welcome to a new edition of A Coffee With. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Hanne Klintøe, Head of PtX Development at Aabenraa Kommune, a municipality that is taking a leading role in Denmark's green transition through circular economy and PtX Development. Circular economy is actually redefining how regions grow and compete, and by rethinking value creation, promoting resource efficiency and fostering innovation, it helps turn sustainability into a driver of long-term economic resilience. Aabenraa has positioned itself as a frontrunner in this transformation, connecting renewable energy, industrial development and cross-border collaboration to strengthen regional competitiveness. In this session, we'll explore how Aabenraa's strategic approach to circular economy is reshaping the business landscape, how municipalities can serve as catalysts for green innovation, and how the German-Danish border region can unlock new value through sustainable partnerships. Hanne Klintøe has been instrumental in advancing Aabenraa's P2X strategy, connecting public and private stakeholders to turn renewable energy into tangible economic opportunities. Her work reflects how local leadership can accelerate Denmark's national green transition and position municipalities and regions as dynamic hubs for circular innovation. Hanne, it's a pleasure having you with us this morning.
Pleasure to be here.
Let's begin with Aabenraa itself. For those who may not be too familiar, could you start by giving us a brief introduction to Aabenraa, its location, economic profile, and what makes it a particularly interesting region in Denmark's green transition?
Aabenraa is situated by the German border in Jutland and is quite large in terms of area. It's 940 square kilometers. Most of that is agricultural. And we are therefore also quite small in terms of inhabitants. But when it comes to infrastructure, we are real heavyweights. We have a deep sea port. We can take the large container ships, we have bunkering of various fuels, and we also have the international railway and motorway going north-south on the TNT route. So in terms of what you can do there are a lot of options, and that's what European Energy has seen, and therefore they've implemented PtX, first solar. I think it's the biggest solar park in the Nordics. It's 3 kilometers long and 1.5 wide. And now we also have their PtX facility where they produce e-methanol. So we're a municipality that is undergoing a huge transformation, binding resources together from agriculture to over transport and to energy.
Yeah, thanks so much for that introduction, and very interesting to learn about recent developments also with European Energy producing e-methanol in Aabenraa community. But the point is, or what we'd like to know, how is the municipality shaping its transformation into this regional hub for circular economy? What have been the main drivers behind this development over the last few months and years?
If we look at years, both the region of southern Denmark and the north of Germany has for many years had a hard time creating growth because of their agricultural profiles. And that is also the case in Aabenraa. And what the politicians have seen is with a real heavyweight infrastructure, also in terms of energy, we have a large transformer station and that is being built out to the max. There are certain advantages in terms of new development. So we have already planned for 2 large data centers, and now we also have PtX, and we have a lot in pipeline. And therefore the politicians have said, well, we really want this. Neither of these technologies are going to give us a lot of jobs. There's a lot of jobs in the building phase, but after all, there isn't that much. So we need to make sure that with this development, we get something else. And what we can build on is the surplus heat that both of these technologies create.
Yeah.
So what we're aiming for is to create a circular production hub where we repurpose all of these resources, both for the green transition, so that we're a green community where you get green district heating from the waste heat, but also where this waste heat is reused as an energy resource in production.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what the politicians have seen, and they've invested heavily in staff. I think we've added 6 members of staff just for this to make it happen, me being one of those. And also just creating a role like mine is quite unusual, to have a commercial profile sitting sort of at the top and being able to just run with it. So the municipality has both politically agreed. 31 politicians in the city council have just agreed this is the direction, we want to be a green frontrunner, but also invested the resources that are needed in order to drive it.
Yeah, that's fascinating to hear for a also relatively small Kommune in terms of inhabitants to formulate that visionary approach and to actually formulate also a systemic approach to green transformation. What role do collaboration and partnerships play in this regard? You've mentioned the politicians have agreed, so there is political will in Aabenraa Kommune. But in terms of collaboration between business and politics, civil society, what role do these partnerships play, and how does it work in Aabenraa?
Several things. It's a very good point. It needs to sort of come right at the tail end of a political decision to drive this direction, because as we are small, we're very dependent on collaborations. So both everyone surrounding us, somebody on the national level, somebody on the international level, but also facilitating a good relationship between the investors and the planning. And what we saw with European Energy when they wanted to plan their PtX facility was that the timeline it usually takes to plan something as complex as that would be maybe 3 years, 4 years, something like that. And they couldn't wait because they had the grant from the state. They won almost the full pool of PtX grants. And there you have quite a strict timeline. So we're implementing innovation, but we also have to innovate our processes. And the administration have been really visionary in doing so. So they knocked all I think it's 38 approval processes for a PtX facility, including a minister's approval, which is a heavy process. And all of those were knocked together and run in parallel, which is untraditional. And that meant we got it through in 17 months.
Instead of potentially 3 years.
Several years.
Plus minus.
Yes, absolutely. So I think what's happening is that we managed to show not only how do you build a full value chain that you can then harvest local advantages on and create new possibilities for businesses that want to run a circular production. So everyone benefits, but we also create a new path for permitting, for competitiveness, for all these different things that everyone is talking about, but nobody really has the formula for.
And European Energy has been basically kind of like a blueprint to see how can we be more efficient, how can we speed up our processes, with nevertheless being very thorough in terms of following all the steps that need to be followed. But that's also interesting to see then how a Kommune also has kind of like a commercial spirit, a business spirit to actually see themselves as an enabler of business.
And that has been the approach right up from the political level from the beginning, that in Aabenraa they saw that if we drive the green transition as a business growth strategy, then we get the most benefits. And it's been very, very successful so far. It's a very good way of running it because you benefit from the investors coming and building something. So it's not only up to the municipality to invest in the green transition and make it happen. Very often we think of the green transition as something that you have to limit this, you have to reduce this,
Exactly.
you have to,
Yeah.
you know, but actually we're building, and by building, we're transforming.
Yeah, and that would have actually been indeed my next question. What you are saying is true. Yeah, also in no matter if it's the German or the Danish discussion, very often speaking about sustainability and about green transition, we are speaking about a moral imperative, but not necessarily always as an economic strategy. And from what I understand and from what we see, Aabenraa Kommune is actually trying to see green transition as an economic strategy to bring forward
Yes.
the Kommune. From your perspective, looking at the company profiles and at the industries in and around Aabenraa, how can you turn circular principles into concrete business value and competitiveness? We've touched upon it. You've mentioned European energy. You've mentioned residual heat being used. So how does it look like from a business perspective, from an industry perspective, if we speak about green transition as a competitiveness strategy in Aabenraa Kommune?
Well, if you think about the long term, any business that wants to be in it for the long term needs to think about what are the assets, the various assets I have, what are the various resources I need, what are they going to cost in the future. One resource that's going to be very scarce, and we know that already, is water.
Yeah.
And part of our strategy is to create technical water, not only for PtX, but also for food production from wastewater. So we basically want to drain water out of all the processes that are already there. One value chain is agriculture, where you run manure into a biogas plant, and then wet, you transport it back to the fields to spread it there as fertilizer. And all this water could in fact be taken out of the manure. You can do pyrolysis on the rest of it, and then the water can be reused again. And by doing that, and by using a resource as wastewater, we both get to clean up the environment in the municipality, but we also create a new resource, so there's enough for future production. And for businesses, it gives them a competitive edge to not only get green energy, not only produce on waste heat, but also know that here we have the resources that we need for the future. When you're then situated in a strategic location at the same time that is close to the greenest transport means that we have, by shipping or by rail, then you have a really good position. On top of that, companies obviously benefit from the fact that we haven't had that much growth for a long time. So real estate prices are low. The land is fairly affordable.
Yeah.
And they can also be part of the build out of the electricity grid. We have one of the strongest grids in all of Denmark. We practically have no downtime. And now that it's being built out to be the biggest transformer station in Denmark, I think more are to follow, but I think it'll be the first. There's a security of supply that is hard to come by other places.
Yeah, very interesting. You've already touched upon certain industries. Obviously, there is P2X opportunities, and European energy is already working on that. You've mentioned data centers, you've mentioned agriculture. So if we look at the vision of Aabenraa of becoming a circular but highly competitive economic area, what are the industries, where are the opportunities that you are actually seeing for private business, Danish companies, German companies, international companies to actually benefit from? And
I'm looking at two fields, both food innovation, so we're looking at plant-based protein production, where very often the processes needed to produce from, say, it could be from mycelia, it could be from various types of vegetables, it could be from peas. There are various feedstocks for alternative protein products. Very often the processing facility uses something like a temperature under 100 degrees. Mm-hmm. And whenever it's under 100 degrees, the surplus heat can be slightly pumped up, mm-hmm. and then you can use that, where traditionally that kind of process would be gas powered or something else that is fossil. So that's one leg, and it can be both food growers, it could be mushroom growers, it could be vertical farming, it could be anything like that produces the ingredients, and it can also be the processing plants, where now often you send it to Holland, where the big CMOs are, and where they produce most of these types of products. So we would like a large CMO to come and establish themselves with us, where the technology is redesigned to actually utilize the surplus heat. So that's one leg. The other leg that's quite interesting to look at is bio-based building materials. Another very strong sector that we have in Aabenraa is the construction sector, which really benefits PtX because there's lots of companies that can help build the plant, and I think about 50% of the work in the PtX plant was local. Okay. So that's quite interesting. Yeah. So we have a very strong sector there, but it's producing mainly in the traditional way, as most construction companies are. And in bio-based building materials, it's the same as what I just described in the food processing, that you can actually use surplus heat because many of the processes are something that it needs to be pressed, it needs to be heated in some way. And there's a real window there to infuse some innovation into a sector we already have. We are the home of Frøslev wood, and they have famously, I think now, funnily, they have set up their own production of thermo wood, which is basically how you treated wood when you built the Viking ships. Okay. So it's only it's only with steam, with heat and steam, and somehow it treats the wood so that it can sustain the being in water. Mm-hmm. And instead of having all this, the terrace planks that are almost green from chemicals, instead of having that, they now have this thermo wood that contains no chemicals. Okay. So we already have the beginning of this sort of sustainable building materials with them, and we'd really like to build on that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, from Viking technologies to circular economy in the 21st century. I don't want to forget to ask you, dear participants, to also ask your questions if you're interested in a further topic, any more closer. But I'd like to zoom out with you, Hanne, a bit out of Aabenraa Kommune. Obviously, we have touched upon it in the beginning. Aabenraa is geographically interestingly located directly at the German border, directly at the motorway down south and at the international railway line. The German-Danish border region, I think, offers unique opportunities for cross-border engagement and innovation. How do you see your Kommune's green agenda contributing to a stronger, more resilient regional economy, thinking southern Denmark and northern Germany together, and where do you see potential for cross-border cooperation going forward from your experience at Aabenraa Kommune?
We've already launched a cross-border collaboration centering around the hydrogen economy. So what I saw when I came to Aabenraa was that there'd been several attempts to create a hydrogen valley, basically these large-scale grant projects under the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, where various public and private actors go together to build out the value chains. But both of the applications have failed. And in my view, it's basically because there isn't an infrastructure keeping everything together. There isn't already an existing ecosystem. Everything has to be built from scratch. And the Hydrogen Valley Call is not really geared to that. So we spoke to the European Investment Bank, who has some large advisory services grants, and we've now designed a project with them through which we will map out the possibilities for working together in the hydrogen economy on both sides, how the ecosystem should be built out, creating a plan for that, and also select specific feasibility studies that can qualify for what's called a PSLF grant, I think. So it's basically if the European Investment Bank sees a large project, say, a very large project. It's a little bit like what Esbjerg is doing now with CCS. So a project of that size, then they can create the loan funding, financing for it, but they then get a 15% grant on top from the Just Transition. And that means we can better build out the infrastructure needed for the hydrogen economy. So that's one initiative. But we think that also the Aabenraa model can be copied because we are so similar on the north of the border and south of the border in this sort of joint geography and quite a large area. We're very, very similar. There's a lot of agriculture, so we have the feedstock for, say, e-methanol or e-SAF. So for the green fuels, we could use our model, but also for harvesting these extra benefits, making sure we have water resources for the companies in the future for sustainable production, making sure that the heat is utilized, making sure that we open the border. Right now, it's really quite hard to work across the border because there are an enormous amount of rules that are so different. So we're also working to see if we can get an agreement, a little bit like the Øresund agreement, that tries to open the border and forge more openness and mobility really in business.
And indeed inspiring because very often we are seeing challenges when it comes to green transition on a macro level. And we are always looking at the big picture and thinking how should that turn into reality. But then we are actually seeing that on a local and regional level, very often there is the key to unlock the opportunities that actually exist. And for a commune like Aabenraa, this means obviously developing your vision at your level of your commune, but also regional collaboration, specifically also with Northern Germany. And I think this is also where both sides of the border can actually profit. We have one question that came in to you, Anne. What is the turnover created through initiatives with industry, now attracted today and in 2 years? So a bit like the numbers, do you already see economic benefits that you could drag down to numbers? And what are the expectations for the return of investment for Aabenraa, for the invest of the commune? Is there any...
Quite a lot. I'm cheating. I'm going to look at the question. Well, the turnover, it depends on how we talk turnover. We've just had a report done on the benefits of VE and PtX, RE and PtX. And we can see that for 1 gigawatt of solar, 1 gigawatt of wind, 1 gigawatt of Power-to-X, that creates almost 15,000 jobs. And that's the first time we've got a number on it. Obviously, we are nowhere near 1 gigawatt, but we will be. So there we have a clear figure on what do we get out of investing so heavily in new staff and putting time aside to drive this development. So that's sort of one side of it. That's also the return on investment. But I think the return on investment is also very much the green transition. It is that we get circular resources, that we get much better conditions for businesses, that we get an infusion of innovation, that we get to clean up our waterways by using the wastewater and not putting it back into circularity in the water systems. So it's both the hard measures and the soft measures. In terms of investments, you could say, I think the Kassø plant cost about 2 billion Danish kroner. And obviously some of that goes abroad because they're buying equipment to implement. But we know that 50% of the workforce was sourced locally, so there is also quite a lot there. But these figures are quite hard to calculate because it depends on what is the value that you include in your calculation. And I think it's super important to have an eye for the sustainability that is implemented.
Yeah, indeed. Speaking about the return of investment, and again, you've mentioned the Kassø plant, maybe as a last question, is there any projects already in the pipeline for further development over the next few years in this context? Because this would also be interesting to know if there is any kind of like knock-on effects further down the line. Is there anything happening?
Yeah, as you're aware, the hydrogen infrastructure is being built now, and we will have 3 stations. So number one, we have a number of PtX developers that want to create a plant in Aabenraa. I think we have 7 in pipeline right now, and I think it's realistic that on the 2030 timeline we'll probably get about 4. One of those is an eSAF producer, so that will give us another green fuel, and then the rest are green hydrogen producers. But we also already have 2 different developers of what we call follow-on businesses, so the ones utilizing the waste heat. And one is even working with one of the data center developers. So there's a security of how they fit into the ecosystem that is not, it's no longer just coupled to one PtX developer, it's also coupled with several other developers. And that gives us a sort of guarantee that no matter what happens, some of this will actually turn into jobs and green benefits and all of that.
Yeah, indeed, inspiring and encouraging to see how on a local, on a municipal level, a commune like Aabenraa is understanding green transition as a competitiveness strategy, and how you are actually already successful in implementing projects, in attracting investments and in creating jobs. So Hanne, the time flew by. Thank you so much for your insights and your time today. I think we got a great overview of what's happening currently in Aabenraa. Your work demonstrates how regional leadership and collaboration can make circular economy a true engine of sustainable growth, not only for Aabenraa, but also further on a regional level for the entire German-Danish border region. Thank you, Hanne.
Thank you.
And to all of you joining us this morning, thank you for being part of a Coffee With. We look forward to welcoming you again soon, and this will be on the 26th of November at 8:30, when we will be having a Coffee With State of Green, and we will be talking about a topic that is also very much at the heart of green transition, and this is sustainable shipping. Thank you so much. Have a great day.